Game development is hard. There's no way around it. But to make it a little bit easier on you, I put together 20 pieces of advice to help you along the way. Let's get started. Tip number 1, start now. Don't wait for the perfect moment to start whatever you want to do. By the time you realize the perfect moment comes, it'll be too late. There's an old quote that goes, "The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now." And that's exactly how I feel with game dev and YouTube. I just wish I started sooner. Tip number 2, scope low. Like lower than that. Game dev takes way longer than you initially realize. If you plan to make some massive game without the proper preparation or experience, you'll quickly overwhelm yourself. As a beginner, I would suggest starting with one mechanic and having the entire game revolve around that. Tip number 3, quitting a game is okay. If you scoped your game way too large and you won't be able to finish it, there's no shame in quitting. Most recently, I quit the GMTK Game Jam, and I'm happy I did. I wasn't a huge fan of the theme, and my ideas were either too complex or I was just not passionate about them. So after a full day of getting nothing done, I quit, and it was one of the best decisions I've made. Tip number 4, actually finish something. This might sound like the opposite of the last tip, but it's not. If you're 80% of the way done with your game, finish it. And the more you finish games, the better you'll be at it. Tip number 5, stop copying tutorials. I hear all the time beginners are stuck in tutorial hell, meaning they're constantly watching tutorials, but never able to finish anything on their own. Unless it's your first 1 to 3 games, you shouldn't be using tutorials as a step-by-step process that you copy one for one. GWiz's tutorials are a great example of what you should watch tutorials for. He gives a basic tutorial on how to work one thing, and then you'd have to put in the rest of the work to customize it however you would like. Tip number 6, cycle through your workflow. It's easy to lose momentum when you're working on one thing for a very long time. Luckily, there's a lot of things to work on in game dev, so if you ever get stuck, you can switch to something else for the meantime. Stumped on coding? Take a break and work on some art instead. You'll be able to stay productive and also come back later with a fresh set of eyes on your code. Tip number 7, make a game design document. If you're making anything that'll take more than a couple days to make, you'll probably benefit a lot from making a game design document. It'll give you a basic outline to go off of and save you a lot of time in the future. Tip number 8, this but that rule. Are you struggling to come up with an idea? Use something that's been proven to work and change it or add on to it. You see this all over YouTube, and it works. You write off of something that people are familiar with and put an unexpected twist on it. Like making Minecraft but in 4D, and making a horror game but you are the monster. Tip number 9, make marketing a priority. Sounds strange, right? Well, at the end of the day, if your game doesn't appeal to anyone, nobody's gonna play it. When doing just about anything in game dev, I try to ask myself, who do I want my audience to be and what do I want them to feel? Tip number 10, if you're in it for the money, give up now. If you were looking for a quick or easy way to make money, game dev is not that. The vast majority of successful games take years to make, and the developers have years of experience behind them. And for those successful indie games, there's generally multiple developers that work on it. But if you want to stand out from the competition, here's why you should check out today's sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant is where you learn by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in math, data analysis, programming, and AI. Brilliant is designed to help you learn efficiently with hands-on problem solving. It allows you to play with concepts, which is proven to be 6 times as effective as a boring lecture video. You'll also get in the habit of building your critical thinking through problem solving, not memorizing. So on top of learning specific topics, you'll also become a better thinker. Brilliant also helps you develop a daily learning habit, which is something I believe is super important when it comes to learning just about anything. It's basically the opposite of mindlessly scrolling on your phone. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/gambit, scan the QR code, or click the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thank you, Brilliant, for sponsoring this video. Tip number 11, your game engine does not matter, because who's gonna guess what kind of engine this game was made in? This was made in Roblox. If you're really struggling and have no idea what to pick, I would suggest Godot or Unity if you're a beginner. Unreal is a good option too, but it's going to be a lot harder to learn when you don't have the amount of tutorials as Unity or Godot. Tip number 12. Start by making your game feel good first. Making your main mechanics feel good and responsive will slowly let the rest of the game fall into place. Sometimes making the mechanics feel good is most of the work when it comes to making a game fun. Tip number 13. Don't take criticism personally. This one was a hard one for me. It's easy to shut down or get upset if someone doesn't like something that you put a lot of time into. Try to detach your sense of worth to the feedback you get on a game you make. There will be rude and nasty people no matter what, and they probably don't know the effort you put in. But take notice to things that you hear multiple times, because even if it sounds harsh, they might have a point. Tip number 14. Failure is a good thing. Failure is the easiest way to learn. It's obvious. If you fail at something, then you can be sure there's something you can improve on. Tip number 15. Save and document everything you make. Reusing code and assets can be a great way to quickly prototype something. Looking back on what you've made in the past can inspire you and give you a feeling of progress. Tip number 16. Execution is more important than your idea. I get it. You don't want to tell anybody your idea because you want to be unique. The reality is there are 8 billion people on this earth. I can guarantee you someone has thought of it before. What truly matters is the way you make it. Look at getting over it versus the game it was inspired by. Tip number 17. You have to get lucky, but luck is not everything. Say a famous YouTuber plays your game. If there's nothing appealing about your game, you're probably not going to get a lot of sales from it. But if it's actually a good game, people will buy it. That's what happened to Among Us in like 2020. Nobody knew about the game until some popular streamers started playing, and because it was so fun, it started gaining traction. Tip number 18. Choose a style and stick with it. In terms of art, it's very difficult to take two completely different styles and have them work well together. If you start making assets without looking at the bigger picture, then there's a good chance your game might turn out looking messy or unprofessional. Two of the biggest signs of amateur pixel art are different sized pixels and using too many colors. Tip number 19. Prototype your game. Especially if you think it's an amazing idea, prototype it. There's a ton of benefits. You'll see if it's actually fun. You'll get a semi-demo, which is also like free advertisement for your game. You'll be able to get feedback from other people, and you'll understand the scope and the core parts for your main game. Which leads me to tip number 20, find balance between the robust and the duct tape. This is the most valuable lesson I learned from actually finishing my first game. I had this idea that you should always code things the right way. Were you ever told as a kid to not take shortcuts because you're cheating yourself? That's what I thought programming was. You shouldn't spend weeks on the most perfect dialogue system if you only have 10 lines of text in your game. And on the flip side, you shouldn't be hand coding the same text box over and over if you have thousands of different lines of text. You have to find a balance between short term or long term. And most of the time, you just have to guess. Because ideally, you want to use the least amount of time possible over the entire course of the project while not sacrificing the quality of the game. Alright, that's enough yapping for me. If you want a funny video, it'll be out soon, and I will see you in the next one.